march us away. There's a battle to fight, and we join in the fray. But it's hell when you know this could be your last day. But it's better than working for Xerox. So march, march, April, May, June, July, August, September, we'll fight every day. And it's fare thee well, all vestige of modesty, all of the Dorsai are singing. Some go for the glory, some just like to fight. But the truth is, we Dorsai are not very bright. We'll steal or we'll screw when we can't shoot on sight. God, it's hell to encounter a fire plug. So march, march, April, May, June, July, August, September, we'll fight every day. And it's fare thee well, all vestige of harmony, all of the Dorsai are drinking. We Dorsai have honor, we always fight fair, except when we're losing and then we don't care. For defeat is disgrace that we never could bear, and we only get paid when we're winning. So march, march, April, May, June, July, August, September, we'll fight every day. And it's fare thee well, all vestige of honesty, all of the Dorsai are cheating. Battle's over, fighting is done. If 10 of us made it, we figure we've won. 'Cause we count the survivors and we count them by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, many. So march, march, April, May, June, July, August, September, we'll fight every day. And it's fare thee well, all vestige of harmony, all of the Dorsai are counting.
Hey there, gang.
One of the hallmarks of all good Dorsai songs is they're pretty self-deprecating.
Damn straight. Most of them involve Tullamore Dew. It's the only reason Tullamore Dew is even mentioned is because it scans, because it always tasted awful.
Yeah, well, at the time it was the most palatable whiskey that they could afford, because they were all poor college students at the time.
Yeah, or more or less.
Okay, let's put it this way: it was the only whiskey that Bob was actually willing to pay for.
There we are.
And aspirin was cheap.
By the way, I will mention that by our standards, any panel where the audience outnumbers the participants is a success. So this is already a massively successful.
Give yourself a round of applause.
Are we later? Did you just start early?
No,
We're just warming
we're
them
not
up.
even
Warming them up.
Simmons isn't even here yet.
Oh, that's right. Okay, good enough. Well, hi.
officially
You
started.
already met Skippy.
Hello.
And you already met Mark. I'm Bob, and that's Ann. We've all sort of been around since the beginning.
Well, you're the old guy.
Oh, I hadn't noticed. Yeah, the beret dates back to the first contract, so just so you know. All right,
I don't want to get into any actual facts until 8:30 when you
absolutely, but we have stories. Matter of fact, the whole reason we do this is because of the stories.
We don't get paid in cash. We get paid in stories.
We get paid in stories.
Yeah.
We get paid in things we can make satiric songs about. You have to be careful around us, because if you do something that's unparalleledly stupid, you will live forever.
Hey, Bob, if you want to use the mic, you should turn it on.
You know what? I've been shouting all day, and I don't know how to stop.
Hey, who let him in here?
All right, That any better? No, you're all still wincing. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Good.
All right.
You are not going to
Technically,
redo
we've
that
got
stupid
about 5 more
commercial.
minutes. So let's give Steve 5 minutes to get here.
Well, yeah, and Kay may be showing up.
Yes, sure. We can start with some out of context quotes.
No, I want to say those.
Oh, okay.
What are we doing now?
I'm just saying
And
we're
we're
about to
sticking.
do a little panel, but
Oh, those.
we'll talk about those later.
Oh, God.
That's never good.
Oh, don't mind him.
We don't.
Just some things cause flashbacks, you know?
4 legs and a skirt does not make a girl.
No, we're gonna read them all later on.
Yes.
All right.
We'll have a dramatic reading of them.
Yeah, how's your Jindar doing? All right. The problem is that anything anybody says brings back memories.
Oh, that reminds me of a story.
Yeah, you don't say that around any of us because, you know, we say, no, there's a story behind that, and then you've lost another 45 minutes. Where you should have been somewhere else doing something else.
Wow, look at those children.
Oh my God! Ah! All right, 75 points for a complete identification of everybody in that thing.
I can do it.
I can do it.
I could do one of them.
It's a Che Guevara on the
original
front.
costume presentation.
That is
1974 Disclave.
Absolutely.
Discount.
1 year
Discount.
after.
Discon, yep.
1 year after the seminal event. You picked some good stuff.
Oh, yeah. But again, we should wait for Steve.
We should wait for Steve.
And
Here's Kay.
here's Steve.
Okay.
Cartoon form.
Oh,
Thank
Lord.
you,
No.
Thank you, Lar.
There's a story behind that.
And you'll probably hear that one.
We were telling earlier, sometimes we recruit from outside of our ranks. Sometimes we just find these reprobates walking down the hall and say, "You, come here."
Yeah, that was, yeah. That was in Philly, right?
No, that's here in, no, that's Confluence.
Right, okay.
That's Confluence right here in Pittsburgh.
Very good science fiction convention.
But yes,
I
yes.
expect to be there 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, if any of you are local and like great literature, here in Pittsburgh there's a great very literary-based science fiction convention called Confluence. More pro authors than you can shake a stick at.
And
really good music,
all
too.
willing to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
Amazing people.
There's no use.
Yeah, well,
Ah.
sorry. There's
There's a little history. 73, that's our first appearance.
That's our first appearance at Anthrocon.
Yeah, that's the Adamsmark table.
Yeah. Is it 2 or 3?
That's who I believe.
Anyways,
That's our first appearance here.
actually at the Adams Mark.
I remember that table, goddamn.
Now, how many of you were at the Adams Mark for an Anthrocon?
All right.
Remember we were talking about elevator problems?
Oh, Lord.
You guys named
There were
your...
only 4 in that whole hotel, and they were slow.
Wasn't one of those the ones that Bookie managed to name?
Yes, Rennie Gobine's young daughter, who was underage at the time, was making book on the elevator. She named them all and it was taking bets on which one would get there first, because there was no numbering system to let you know where the elevators were. She cleared a few $100, which she did donate to the charity, we will tell you.
Yeah.
But yes, that is why one of our members is nicknamed Bookie.
Yeah.
Is that Starcon? Starcon, yes.
Yeah.
Original Starcon.
Wow.
That's the Winden. That was the year they were at the Winden.
Oh, God.
Oh, Lord.
Is
Also,
that Sabrina?
Yeah, that's Sabrina.
Golly, it's so discouraging
Well,
to see
05,
what
she
you
would've-
look
she would've been
for
10.
22 BC.
Who's 20, she's 22 today. She was 10 in that picture.
The Wyndham, do we have power?
hey, we now know a secret for across the street. There are secret keys.
Here's Giza picking up chicks, or in this case, rodents.
How typical.
Yes. 100% Cheeto, leopard organic.
Fresh from the teeth?
Fresh from the teeth.
Well, spelling is not his.
It was
a typo in one of Geeze's email messages, and I just couldn't help myself.
Rick.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Well,
the
did
word-
that label?
Yes, I did.
Oh dear.
Yeah, the word cheat and squeeze should give you an idea of where this went from.
Wow.
That's Mark.
Take a seat here.
Yep. That's the filth. That is
Okay.
that's a
Tell me about
filth.
that.
There's Bernie Porat.
Yeah.
See too much of it.
Oh, yeah, here's a bit of history.
Oh.
Wow.
Adam's
Does
Mark.
anyone not know the story of the Adams Mark?
Which one?
So-
Sure. This kind of keeps going.
We were cruising along, having a good time at the Adams Mark. Quite literally, about 6 months before the con hit, the owner of the Adams Mark walked in and said, "Everybody out, I just sold the building." I mean, literally, walked in the front door, went to the manager's office, slammed it and said, "Right, everybody out, cancel all the reservations, I just sold the building." I sold it to Target. Which means that the Anthrocon's contract was whipped out from underneath him. The head of events at the Adams Mark was Magic Tom, the greatest event manager I've ever worked with. Amazing fellow. In 3 weeks, he found another hotel in Philadelphia willing to take on Anthrocon on 6 months' notice. Now, if you know anything about the hotel business, to take, at the time, about a 5,000 person convention, about a 3,000 person convention, and move it 6 months out before your event and find enough space is nearly an impossible task. And yet he did it. And we only moved, what, about 5 miles up the road?
Wasn't there.
Yeah, no, it was something, but yeah, we praise Magic Tom and his magic tube, and boom, there went the hotel. And now in that spot sits the Target.
They had an auction of things like the elevator buttons and all
Yeah.
that. As Uncle Connie put it, it was a dump, but it was our dump.
It was. Oh, that is Diana and Neil Gaiman.
I thought that was Yay.
I'm just telling other stories before we get to Dorsai stories. Pretty soon we'll get to Steve. Yeah, this is the Hugo Losers Party, which is actually the best party to go to. And our daughter decided, no, I don't want to go to the Hugo Losers Party. I'm going to go to teen programming. So it's like, hey Sabrina, guess you missed at the Hugo Losers Party. Your favorite author. And she's like, God damn it.
Okay, we're assuming knowledge here.
Yes.
We all come from old-line literary science fiction fame. We now have furry members, but the old folks, yeah, well, mostly literary science fiction, the folks who throw the World Science Fiction Convention every year and hand out the Hugo Awards. And every year at the WorldCon, there is a party for the people who were nominated but didn't win, hence the Hugo Loser.
Right, and the winners actually can't come.
Yes.
They are excluded from the party.
There are now actually sort of anti-Hugos awarded.
Yes, George Martin decided.
Yeah, George Martin is sponsoring a whole bunch of anti-Hugos.
Which he's the sole jury and executioner of.
Yeah.
And they're all made out of like 1942 Dodge hood ornaments.
Yeah.
Nice.
But anyway, it's April.
Yeah, let's get going.
Okay,
Steve will
let's
catch
get
us.
going.
So roll it back
Hi.
into the Wayback Machine. Hi there.
So, I'm Mark.
You're a
Oh, I
Dorsai?
want people to pick up their cues. Thank you.
Nah. Just
So-
play one on TV.
Back in late 2001, as I understand it, Renegade, who is our contracts officer, meaning among other things, he's the one who responds to inquiries about, hey, we're interested in your services, got an email from some guy named Sam Conway.
Old-time friend of Mel.
Mel White, one of our members, had recommended
it's
that he
a slightly more
contact us.
complex than that.
All right.
The Anthrocon was having trouble with their security force. And they were like, oh God, what are we going to do? We don't know. And Sam grumbled about, man, I wish I could find some guys that I could rely on. And Mel White and Diana and Heather all went, we know some guys. And basically connected Kagi with Rennie.
And so what happened is, Renegade got this email through the official Dorsai contact email address that said, hi, my name is Sam Conway, also known as Kage. I run this furry convention, and I'd like to talk to you about working at it. And Rennie, of course, immediately read this email and said, what the hell's a furry? We don't ask that question anymore. No. We are very happy to be here, actually. guys are fun.
Yeah.
Okay, you have to understand that many of us have been going to World Science Fiction Conventions since 1969.
Yeah.
Okay, at a time when the WorldCon had the energy that you guys have every single minute of every single day. You go to a WorldCon now, you can die of boredom with cobwebs on you.
I was the youngest, I was the youngest guy
Why
at
we
San
are
Antonio.
That,
At the San Antonio WorldCon,
Yeah.
I felt like I was the youngest guy there.
yeah,
Yeah, I was at the San Antonio Worldcon, and honestly, at one point, I just looked around the crowd, and I said, damn, there are a lot of old white guys here.
I wasn't looking in the mirror or anything.
But, the thing is, this panel was my idea, so blame me for everything.
we blame you, Mark.
I know you do.
Yes.
It occurred to me that some of you may have looked at everything about this and gone, what the hell's a Dorsai?
Well, that's what we said at the beginning too, or Rennie said at the beginning.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
So,
So we're even.
the thing is, a little bit of history to start us off. It started as far back as the 1950s, when a science fiction author named Gordon R. Dickson, who we all miss terribly, Gordy was a wonderful guy, we called him the Gordfather, wrote a series of stories, everything from short stories to novels, set in a future where humanity had gone to the stars and settled various other worlds. One of these worlds was called Dorsai. And the folks who settled Dorsai found that it was a world that was very poor in natural resources. They needed trade to survive, and all they had to trade were themselves. So the Dorsai in these stories became the greatest mercenary soldiers in human history. So, good stories, we all recommend them. Fast forward again. 1973, the World Science Fiction Convention in Toronto.
Torcon.
Torcon 2?
Two.
Something got stolen from the art show.
You have to understand that at that point, the WorldCons were using reticops for security on the art show. Clueless reticops.
Sleeping radicals.
And so, a fellow named Bob Asprin, those of you who read science fiction may be familiar, and fantasy may be familiar with him as Robert Lynn Asprin, author of the Myth Adventures book starring Oz and Skeeve, or The Fool's Company.
Or Thieves World, or...
Well, those are the
Okay,
ones
somebody's
that-
been doing his reading, thank you.
Yeah.
Bob decided that something had to be done about this. And Bob had already become friends with Gordy, and with Gordy's permission, he set up a group to offer the convention security services, fans serving fans. And with Gordy's permission, he set them up as the Dorsai Irregulars. Now, I'll back up even more at this point because Bob was not only a science fiction fan. There is this group out there known as the Society for Creative Anachronism. Yeah, some of you have heard of it. Dedicated to recreating the Middle Ages not as they were, but as they should have been. Meaning all the courtliness and costumes and jousting and sword fights and all that, but
And none of the bad sanitation, plague, and the rest of it.
There you go.
And chivalry.
so far nobody who's gone to the Penzance War has come down with cholera that I know of.
Or plague.
Yes.
Like
There
the
have been a
spirit
few other
actor.
diseases, but, you know.
But anyway, when Bob first showed up in the SCA, he wasn't interested in doing the courtliness and the, European costumes and all that. No, he and his friends formed the Mongol Horde. And so the backstory he created for the Dorsai is that, well after Dorsai was settled, the last remnants of the Mongol Horde arrived there, found a swampy spot, settled in, and became the least disciplined of the Dorsai.
Thus, the irregulars.
Yes.
Yep. Couldn't be dislodged from the swamp either.
Not that the irregular Dorsai didn't try.
Many times, actually.
And so, in
Well,
1974, at the World Science Fiction Convention
Look back once, yeah, there you are.
in Washington, D.C., this group showed up and actually won Best Group in the Masquerade.
I don't know how, that was some of the worst close order drill I've ever seen.
They weren't judged by the quality of that.
Oh, God.
And
They
announced
could drill
that they
sergeant
were
lead.
the Dorsai Irregulars. This one right here with the beard and the laughter, that's Bob Askren.
Lee Darrow.
Again, we miss him terribly.
Lee Darrow.
Yes.
Lee Darrow.
Greg Hagland, Ann Brett, Linda Glasscock, Becca Price,
Lucy Seaman.
Lucy
and
Seaman.
Bill Brown.
Phil Brown. And they did this presentation at the Masquerade, but also used it as their first chance to announce that the Dorsai regulars were available to provide security services for other conventions. Now, I hear...
Backstage, we're listening to this. Now, we've been, basically, he was a talented, if somewhat atonal folk singer. Well, it was said of Bob that he carried a tune like a concealed weapon. So we've been singing with him really since 1969, really. And as a result, attracted people like Kelly Freese, the most decorated SF artist ever, who caught Ann here in an elevator at this convention and said,
I've been looking for you all over the place. I understand you're the only person who knows all 200 verses of Your Mother Swims After Troop Ships.
Here we're looking at this. We've known Bob for years. And we, Ann and I, are at the bottom of the steps behind these folks as they come off. Bob sort of half disbelieving that this is ever going to get started. And we said, okay, we're in. Now what? And right behind us was the art show director for the first local convention in Chicago, WindyCon 1. And she looked at Bob and said, okay, I've got an art show to run.
Put up or shut up.
Irk. And so this is August, late August, early September. October, November, 2 months later, WindyCon 1, the first contract.
Now, my point of view was a little different. DisCon 2 was only the second convention I had ever been to, and the first one was an 83-person college convention that I worked on. DisCon 2 had 4,500 people. So a little bit of culture shock there. So the night after, in the evening after the Masquerade, I was wandering around, and I wandered into this function room, and there were a bunch of people singing, because that was the place where Bob first introduced the set of songs he'd written for the Dorsai. Being 18 and stupid, I walked out again and looked for a party. But I actually met up with everyone a few months later at a convention called Confusion in Michigan that January.
Yep.
So that's your basic history. And by the way, I'm sorry, I was going to include a couple of quick disclaimer type notes at the beginning of this. First of all, this is not listed as an 18 plus item in the program. I don't think we have any issues with that, looking at the crowd here. But yeah, the language will occasionally stray, at least into PG-13 territory, just so you know. Also, I will mention, yes, we will be telling actual stories, including furry stories. We will not name names, at least not attendee names, in these stories. If you recognize yourself, just keep your mouth shut and no one will know. Okay?
Uh-oh, anybody recognize that?
You used to look like that.
I used to look like that. That was actually a Christmas present. So that is a Kelly Freese cover from the 1974 cover of analog science fiction. That was, well, we'd been up filking late. It was about 3 in the morning. We're outside the main function space. There is Ben Bova, the editor, Kelly Freese, the artist.
Rossler.
Yeah, Rossler was there. Rossler was not part of this group. Gordy was. Aspirin was. And one of the songs, Mark, you got a better grip on the lyrics.
Which one is
The Sketchpad.
Yeah. Gordy had, or Kelly had this great habit of, if you ever fell asleep at a party, guess where you would end up.
He had a contract. He was working for Laser Books at that point, which for an artist was like cash immediately in the hand, because they were putting out a series of really mediocre novels, but they needed really good covers so that they would sell. They got Kelly to do covers for these novels, but there was like one a month, which is really hard for a really good artist, and he needed faces. And so if you went to a room party and Kelly was there, you got 4 or 5 Kelly Freas sketches on his pad, bing, 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 and he'd give you 2 or 3 of them and keep the 2 best he liked.
And so,
He was collecting
someone took an
faces.
old tune about Anne Boleyn called With Her Head Tucked Underneath Her Arm, and wrote a song about Kelly, and I will give you
The
called
verse.
with his sketch pad underneath his arm, which includes the lines, you go out to a party, you tie him to a dog, you toss a couple doubles down, you're walking in a fog, and when you sober up, you're on the front of Analog.
And I was.
With his sketch pad underneath his arm.
And Aspirin sang that in this little group. Bova looked at Kelly, pulled something out of his briefcase, gave it to Kelly. Kelly looked at it, grinned, and gave it to me. And that was what was on it. At which point I kind of melted.
Okay, so,
The fun thing is that about 3 Christmases later, I walk into my bedroom and the original to that was right on the wall. Underneath which was an extraordinarily attractively dressed wife.
And on that note,
but let's talk about you.
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah. Before we actually started doing Dorsai shtick, we did Klingon shtick.
Well, no,
Ah,
Dorsai
the
came
KDC.
first, Klingon a year or 2 later.
Yeah, but
Now, keep in mind, this is the 70s. This is before the Knuckleheads.
yeah.
So this is original series Klingon.
Our commanders taught us how to duck before we went through airlock.
Yeah. That also brings in Klingon discipline. No, bad Klingon! Whack, 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 whack.
We did several conventions as the Klingon Diplomatic Corps. We were the nice ones. We gave out candy.
Yeah.
And some of the candy, little girl.
Yeah.
We have Aspirin here on the
That's me.
right, and Bob had there. Our
That's
lovely
me
Bob
again.
there on the left.
That's thin, not bald, and not gray. Oh,
That's thin, not bald, and not gray either.
Lord. Yeah.
That's also not me. I was never that looked at.
No, that's
I think that's Trace.
no, Debbie.
No, really?
That's them.
Wow.
See, even we don't remember
There's
at this
Becca.
point.
Becca.
This is back to WindyCon.
Yeah.
There's Bob.
Yeah, he liked Blitz a lot.
He's just slightly out of order, but that's okay. Okay. Old timey guys, has you ever heard the term Mary Sue? Like, she's a real
Yeah.
Mary Sue
Yeah.
character?
Yeah,
See the young lady in the front with the, kneeling down?
yeah.
That's Paula Smith.
She
She
created
coined the phrase Mary Sue when she was editing a Star Trek fanzine, and there was literally a character in it named Lieutenant Mary Sue.
No. Paula saw the trend of fan fiction that was wish fulfillment, where the story features these were Star Trek fanfics, because that's what there was back then. And as a fanzine editor, she got story after story after story, in which the protagonist was a young woman who was basically dropped into the Enterprise and turned out to be so wonderful and highly competent that she saved everybody and everybody loved her.
It spawned a folk song.
Yes,
And
well,
some Mary Sue.
and but Paula wrote a satirical story
Yes.
that exaggerated these trends to the absolute maximum, and the main character was Lieutenant Mary Sue, and that's where the term originally comes from. This is a very real phenomenon. The woman standing just to the right of Paula is Sharon Ferraro, who I shared a house with for a time back in the late 70s and early 80s. So I had the opportunity to occasionally read some of this fiction, and I kind of stopped after I read the story where it wasn't exactly a true Mary Sue because the viewpoint character was Uhura, and the story opened with her musing on her secret dual role as communications officer and captain's woman as she prepared to take the transporter down to the surface of the planet they were orbiting to visit her illegitimate son by Spock.
It was a dark time.
Yeah. It was an interesting time. Also,
You don't see that.
This is the era that the term slash comes from, because the original slash fiction ask us later, this is not an 18+ panel, came from Kirk/Spock. But anyway,
Here's
This is
Bob and Kelly
and Brett,
Brett.
his wife.
Yeah.
Kelly
Kelly
Freeze.
Yes,
As
that is
commander-
one of the most decorated artists in science fiction
Yes.
history.
His Klingon call sign was Commander Acrylic.
Yep. And that's his wife, Polly.
And you guys think you invented leashes?
Kelly had this habit of wandering off looking for faces and vanishing in the depths of a convention. And it got to the point where Polly literally had to leash him just to figure out where he was.
On the other hand, I will use that as a segue.
Oh, okay.
Here's my first furry story. This is an actual entry from our security log at Anthrocon a few years ago. And I quote, "A gentleman got put in handcuffs in a non-sexual way."
Thank you.
In his room, only to discover that they didn't have the keys. Cuffs were behind his back and accidentally tightened, so it was cutting off his circulation. Friends 1 and 2 put a husky head on him to get him down the lobby and spare him embarrassment. This was not successful. Entire lobby was racked in stitches. Policeman on duty was able to open one cuff, but maintenance had to pick the second cuff. Pittsburgh cops were nowhere in sight. Hilarity ensued. Then later, perpetrator of the handcuffing has promised never to do anything as stupid as this ever again. He also owes us 20,000 push-ups.
Would you like some detail?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Actually,
That's all that needs to know.
yeah, just
Yeah,
try
well,
to
except
imagine.
that the officer in question was Officer Will. Who here knows Officer Will, please?
Just a couple.
Oh,
No, but, yeah, so what happened is that this was a room being shared by two young het couples, and one of the guys decided it would be fun to handcuff his friend. He thought he was using the cuffs he had brought with him that A, he had a key for, and B, had a trick latch anyway that he could open. He was wrong on both counts. And they're freaking out, and it was one of the women who said, okay, we're going to have to go get help. The guy who was cuffed was embarrassed to come down in public, and she was a suitor. So she offered to lend him her head.
Also remember, he was only wearing boxer shorts.
Yes. So this poor guy comes, the elevator opens, and this poor guy is perp walked through the lobby with his hands cuffed behind his back
in boxer shorts.
and a husky head.
And of course, the first person he encounters is poor JJ, who's
Yes,
a local
James,
here,
was the sergeant on duty at the
on
time.
duty at the time,
Who
who
grabbed him.
collected him and took him over to the Allegheny Sheriff's policeman that works with us, Officer Bill. And all the officer could think of as this was coming towards him was, what could this furry have possibly done to be perp cuffed and marched down here by the Dorsai?
Now, I was in ops when these four people showed up. He was the sergeant on duty. First,
Hence the push-ups.
yes. First, the women came in, and they were worried that they had done something wrong, and they were going to have their badges pulled.
Right.
No. He tried to recruit one of them.
Yes!
You handled the situation with intelligence and humor. That's what we look for. You ever want to work with us at another con, give us a call. Then the guys showed up, and the non-victim got the, "You're going to leave the handcuffs at home from here on, aren't you?" speech. He agreed to that, and then as they were turning to leave, he says, "Oh, and you owe us 20,000 push-ups."
He gave me the first 10 right there.
Bob for a long time is very good about telling people what to do and where to go. So, one of the earliest things we did, our first kind of normal gig, was guest escort. This is probably New York.
Yeah, I think so.
Looks like
That's
it.
George Takei and Jimmy Doohan with Mark Leonard behind,
Going through the kitchen.
believe
Okay.
that's Liz Pierce at the back.
So we got our start at literary science fiction conventions, but then the Star Trek conventions called.
Yes. Now, one of the curious stories at this point was, back then, now nowadays we have nice FM radios, we use cell phones, you know, we have a certain expectation of privacy on our communication. The problem was back then, all we had were CB radios. So any kid who got a communicator Star Trek walkie-talkie could listen in. So we had to be surreptitious in what we said. All of our great guests were assigned call signs. Our George Takei. George is a,
WG.
well, yes, he was WG for Where's George? Well, George is in the kitchen talking to the kitchen staff. George is jogging in the park. George is riding the subway because he's fascinated by mass transit. George is talking to the homeless people in the park.
Wonderful guy, easily distracted.
Let's all have George Takei.
So
This is
this,
Chicago or?
That looks
no, I
like.
still think that's New York.
First there was a,
There's, I don't see these aren't in the.
Well, wait a minute, it is New York, because that's when we took over the bridge.
Yeah.
so the first big Trek con was in Chicago, that the Dorsai word, was in Chicago. And that was probably about as exhausting as your typical Anthrocon.
Yeah.
Worse,
It was
we
worse.
weren't prepared for it.
Uh-huh.
And we had to do the whole thing in Klingon costume.
You guys are easy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You ain't spend a day with Shatner. Now, don't forget, today, Bill is a nice guy. He's learned to errors of his ways. He has opened up and loves his fans and is a great guy. This Shatner, there's a four-letter word begins with D that described him perfectly back then.
Yeah,
Not unlike calling him a jerk.
yeah,
We didn't call him Captain Jerk for nothing,
yeah.
because he was a jerk.
But you see, just rambling, well, Anne wrote a song about the Chicago Con. One example is, tied to the little poster and a pair of rubber ears. The crowd stampeding down the hall to rip the stars in pieces small to keep as souvenirs. So there were crowd control issues, of course, because Star Trek had become big. And then I will turn it over to the man who was at New York.
All right. We're sitting up on the top floor of the Conrad Hilton Hotel in Chicago in the fall of 1975. And we are finishing up the Chicago StreckCon, and we are looking at each other and saying, oh God, this was exhausting, we're never going to do this again. This, by the way, is the story that invokes, well, we'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
At which point, Aspirin, ever the optimist, comes bopping in to where we are slumped and weeping in exhaustion and says, guess what? They want us to do New York in February. And we look at him and we say, you have to be joking. He said, no, look, they're going to pay our rooms, our board, they're going to give us a per diem, they're going to pay for our airline tickets, and we get to work with the deck crew again. Same format. We say, okay, now I got to remember, at this time there were 20 of us. That's it. At this point in time, there are more than 100.
Yeah.
Okay?
And our typical Anthrocon crew with friends that we bring in is
Absolutely.
50 to 70.
So in February, in Chicago and Detroit and parts northeast, west, and south, we climb on airplanes, rendezvous in New York, check into the hotel, get into Klingon Glitz, put on our weaponry, hit the floor running on Friday night, and it goes pretty doggone well.
Meanwhile, at Ticketmaster,
Ticketron at that
Ticketron,
point.
yeah, this was before Ticketmaster.
they've been told, okay, this is a 5,000 person event. Ticketron calls up the convention and says, we're sold out. The head of the convention says,
Keep selling.
they sold 20,000 tickets to an event that could hold 5,000.
And that 5,000 wasn't the cons limit, that was the fire marshal's limit.
And all of them turned up on Friday morning.
Well, Saturday
Because
morning.
everybody wanted to see
So
Star
the
Trek
problem
cast.
here was Friday night, as things wound down, Bob Aspirin, in the presence of all of us and God and the community of serpents, invoked the pastry gods.
Dun, dun, dun.
There are 3 words that none of us, you will never hear any of us say in conjunction. The first
By
2
the way,
are,
I'm taking the curse off it so you can actually say
Right.
We can say it.
no, I will not, because the first 2 are piece of, and the third is a pastry with frosting on top.
No.
Not
Oh, well, okay,
pizza.
sure.
Okay?
Yeah, very true. So, yeah, this will be
Okay.
a piece of cake.
All right, and we won't say
I
it,
never read be it.
but he said it. The following morning, Ann and I, sans glitz, because we weren't on duty until 10 o'clock for the 10 o'clock show, are sort of wandering down the hall waiting for breakfast. And Aspirin shows up, the most peculiar color I have ever seen, short of a furry convention. And he says, get into glitz, we have a problem. Because all freaking 20,000 of those New York Trekkies showed up at once and were wrapped 3 times around the New York Hilton.
Now, here is where the legend comes in. This hotel, as I understand it, was constituted so that the main ballroom was on the 2nd floor.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
yes.
There was an escalator going from the lobby up to the 2nd floor.
Martin?
Escalator.
One.
One escalator. And we had to tell the other 15,000 people, we're sorry, the ballroom is full. You have to wait here for an hour while we give the show to the first group, and then we'll start letting up the second group.
Now, you have to understand, the cast, the Trek cast, in their amazement and wonderment, said, was the situation explained to them, and they said, no problem, we'll stay around and talk to as many people as we can during the day. So they were more than willing to give their talks, let the cycle come through, and then give their talk again, and let the cycle go through, and give their talk again.
And again and again and again.
At this point, one of the Dorsai, in Klingon garb, a fellow named Mike Longcore, is on the escalator trying to keep people calm.
Down at the bottom, but up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Full view.
And, yes, also known as, among the SCA folks, as Moonwolf of Ribbonstar.
I think he's held every rank that you can hold in Sky at one point. or
Well,
another.
when you figure he'd been
You ain't
king
got a
3
world.
times by that time.
That's it.
But
Which is-
anyway, kings in the SCA are kings by right of combat, by the way. No, I'm kidding. So he's there trying to keep up. I promise you, you will get up there. Somebody in the crowd starts a chant. Who trusts a Klingon? Who trusts a Klingon? And it starts to grow because these things are infectious.
At which point,
At which point, this is where the legend comes in. He yelled for quiet, pulled off his black leather boot, put his foot up on the rail of the escalator, which was stopped, and showed them all that he was wearing rainbow-colored toe socks. And said, how can you not trust a guy wearing toe socks? The crowd laughed, and the whole thing was defused. This is the kind of tactics we like to use.
I heard about the toe socks, I didn't know it was Moonwolf.
Oh, yeah.
That was Wolfie.
Surprised
And
me it was
now,
Moonwolf.
you also have to understand, the fellow who was kind of looming behind him, kind of giving gravitas, was a red-headed fellow wearing cool sunglasses, who wasn't at the con. He wasn't a fan, he wasn't anything, he was the guy who delivered the program books. This fellow's name was Mike Short, and he very quickly afterwards became a big-time science fiction fan, married to Robin Wood, the artist, and became a member of our crew, because he happened to be the guy who got assigned to drive the program books to the hotel, late.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Just
this
be
is why we
careful
think
around
you
us.
guys
You
are
get
beasts.
sucked in.
Okay, so I'd like to get back to some furry content. We've used up half our time already.
Yeah, but there's something coming on after us.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So, we have various ways of amusing ourselves. One of them is that as we walk around the convention and work in various places, we overhear things. And we hear things that you hear it and you go, what? And we just put them in the law. They are labeled OOCQ. This stands for out of context quotes. Here are, and what I think we should do is just start at one end and do a round robin here. Here are a selection of actual out of context quotes that were retrieved from our security laws. We'll
The
just start.
first part of his fursuit that wore out were the knees.
All I know is someone's going to wax the bear.
The men's room by registration smells of spiced cinnamon. The men's room by the gaming smells like pee and death.
Sorry, Giza. Yogurt lost its sexual orientation 5 years ago.
You know, the lack of voices in my head is sort of disturbing.
My husband is so interested in his voicemail that I've put my pants on. Thanks, everyone.
Mama-san's camera crew has permission to peek through the curtains into Kage's A-hall.
It's not pretty. It's like watching a thresher eating a panda.
Take that lizard out of here and drain it.
Galen, please remove your tiara first.
Until I hear a blood-curdling scream, I ain't getting up.
We get that way by Sunday.
Yeah.
No blood, no sympathy.
All sorts of things I like to suck, but peat bog, not one of them.
So, can I rub your banana?
Oh, please. It was, oh Lord. They're dry erase markers. What harm? Oh, damn.
I wanted clarification on rough closure and, oh, don't forget the vomit.
One of them falls asleep, and then they get their toenails painted. It's the weirdest thing.
Sorry I'm late. I had to stop and kiss my willy.
Hey, do I still have some flour on my face?
I don't care who you slept with last night. Just tell me what you need.
In the brain and not the chest, headshots are the very best.
Burn a shave.
I'm the poster boy for why they invented clothes.
They lynched the were-hamster.
It isn't community outreach. It's really more like community reach around.
We are discouraging nefarious things, but nefarious is okay.
The official sound of the evening is a mouse having an orgasm.
I'm just thinking of all the things I've had in my mouth.
Oh no.
That ass must be peace bonded.
4 legs and a skirt do not make a girl.
In the race to win, between a slug and a potato, it is unwise to varnish your clams. Makes no sense at all.
Also, I am
Unwise
forced to
varnish your
admit
clams.
that last night I actually had to report an OOCQ on myself. One of those moments where you say something and 2 seconds later you think, wait, what did I say? I was working, managing the elevator lines. And you have all been through the elevator lines in the West. You know how it works. You walk up, you tell us your floor, we punch the button, we tell you which car to go to. The flaw in the system is that it's not very good at tracking when a car is full. So sometimes it will keep trying to send more and more people to a car that we know is already overloaded. And when that happens, we have to ask people to wait a couple of minutes until that car is gone so we can punch it in again and find a different car.
And we
And
mentioned that the system here in the West End truly, truly sucks.
And at one point, I realized that I had just said, hold on, as soon as we get these people off, I'll re-enter you.
Which certainly beats what this lovely lady told me as she climbed on the aircraft to come here this weekend. She said, just strike them all and let Rennie deal with them in the morning.
My favorite out of context quote so far this year is, hey, I got the peace bond a dog. No, a real one.
It's
a
true.
lovely
There's
dog,
a dog who
Kaylee.
has a peace bond strap today.
And sometimes the context helps. Steve Simmons mentioned to me that at one point, this was not this year, somebody walked in to hotel ops, said, every time I masturbate, it's 5 points for Gryffindor, and walked out.
One of my favorites like that was one year, it's early morning, we're sitting in ops, and a suitor comes running around the corner holding a sign that says, I'm naked! And ran out.
Yeah, and of course there was Anne's pronouncement on furry fandom, which was occasioned several years ago by an oncoming near tornado thunderstorm and a fur running out the front of the Weston wearing nothing but
My stories.
all yours. Take it.
I can tell you from personal experience at this convention, and indeed at the Weston Hotel, that in any 100 furries, 85% of them will come in out of the rain. Another 14 will come if their mama tells them to. And one of them will strip down to his skivvies, put on a fur tail and fur ears, wrap himself in an extra long heavy-duty extension cord, and run into the thunderstorm. And
Yes,
he didn't
it
want to come in. And when he came in and we invited him up to ops to explain himself, he said that he had been mixing, was it Jack Daniels, with coffee. And the poor Seattle man who was manning the computer at the time said, can I kill him? I'm from Seattle. You don't do that to coffee.
A couple of years ago, it was early morning, we were sitting in ops, and somebody had brought in a fursuit head that they had found in a room.
Oh, yes.
So I put it down on the chair next to me. I didn't want to just toss it in the lost and found box, so I put it on the chair. I figured someone's going to be along quickly for this. And sure enough, about 5 minutes later, the obvious rest of the suit wrapped around the fellow with this really panicked look on his face going, oh my God, I've lost my fursuit head. Has anybody seen it? And I went, no, look around. It came up. Now, this was a fully articulated jaw head, and it was like, Daddy! Don't you love me? Why did you leave me? Give me a keys. The whole room cracked up except that guy who was going,
Which one was the con with the frat boys?
What?
gotta be more specific than that.
So, drinking contest.
Oh yeah, that was Indy.
Okay, at Indy FurCon one year, turns out they were sharing the hotel with a fraternity gathering.
Oh, Lord.
This was cause for concern. But it turned out the concern was unnecessary, because a bunch of suitors and a bunch of frat guys got into a drinking contest.
Oh no.
And by the end of
Yeah,
it,
what could go wrong with this?
by the end of it, the frat guys were wearing the heads.
Yeah, we make friends.
You guys are good at
wherever we
making
go.
friends.
Yes.
I heard the chant on that was first, take it off. Take
Yes.
it, and then it was put it
Let us put it on, put it on.
Yes, that is true.
Actually, before we go too far away, I wanted to add one more thing to Bob's story about the New York Strecon.
Yeah.
So, as he said, we were promised room, board, airlines, the whole works.
Yes.
Aspirin, being an accountant, insisted that we get paid up front,
Oh, yes.
and we did.
Yep.
We were the only ones who got paid at that con. Because the con chair, seeing the cash boxes overflowing with money, split for Mexico.
Right. Nobody got paid but us.
Wow.
Now, the coda to that was, of course, she deposited the ill-gotten gains in a Mexican bank in pesos, which 3 months later crashed.
So she didn't get paid either.
Just in case you were wondering, this particular photo was taken at Mid-America.
No, that's Arizona.
That's Arizona?
That's the.
Oh,
that's
right,
Expo.
that was,
Which was another kind of a cluster.
yeah,
But-
but the important thing here is, back to us, there's Kelly Freeze. The guy on the bed in the red shirt, Robert Anson Heinlein.
And next to him, Gordy Dixon.
Next to him, Gordy Dixon, both members of the Dorsai Regulars.
Here's
Members,
Bob
eh?
Aspirin speaking to Harlan Ellison, who unfortunately we lost this week.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to throw in a quick story here, and I will preface this by saying that some stories get repeated because the legend is just too good to die. Harlan hated this story. He denied vehemently that it ever happened. Even though there are people within our group who will swear that it did.
Absolutely.
And claim
we
to
were
know
there.
who
No
was
shit,
involved.
there I was.
Yep.
The story is a short one, is a simple one. You can sort of tell relative heights in that picture. The story
Oh,
is
this
that
one.
Harlan approached a statuesque blonde at a convention, and at his smarmiest said, "What do you say to a little fuck?" And she said, "Hello, little fuck," and walked away.
Part of the story that did happen was him coming back from lunch with some people, walking up the shutdown escalator, getting up, being stopped by Dave Manship and a few others, and going, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't come in here without a badge." Harlan reached over, snatched the badge off our guy's chest, put it on his own chest, walked past him, turned around, and handed him the badge, and kept going. And I know that one was true.
Yep.
Okay, now,
There's Robert Anson.
getting back to things people have said for a moment. We like you guys.
Yeah.
We like working with you. You're fun. But sometimes there are mixed emotions.
Much like how you feel about your children sometimes.
I was working a day shift at the Motor City FurCon in Novi, Michigan. I was just sitting outside the programming area doing badge check. So real easy stuff.
This is one of those no shit Sarge stories.
Oh yeah, we have a term for certain types of stories. They are no shit, I was there stories.
Just sitting there.
Oh, just sitting there, minding his
An
own
attendee
business.
walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you guys for all the work you do for us." Now, this is one of the reasons we love. We have worked science fiction conventions, gaming conventions, anime conventions. You are known as the group that actually says thank you.
Wow.
And we really appreciate that, honestly. But this guy walks up and he said, "I wanted to thank you for the work you do." And I said, "Well, thank you very much for saying that. We really love hearing that." And then he said, and this is a quote, "When I see that beret, I feel safe drinking myself under the table." Not what we were aiming for.
We'll take it.
I'm going to tell one of my husband's stories. This happened to him the very first time we came to work Anthrocon in 2006. A diminutive person in a mouse suit with pink ears came up to him and squeaked, "Thank you for keeping us safe."
Yeah,
And
sometimes.
this very weekend, I admonished someone for poor behavior. He apologized. He said, "I won't do it again." And then he said, "Thank you so much for being here." You guys.
Now, sometimes even the questionable moments are cute. Once a few years ago, I was at the hotel end of the Skyway, doing badge check for people going into the convention center on a Saturday night. And there was a young woman there who was just flitting from group to group, talking to people and flirting with people, and just having a wonderful time. And she came over and started to talk to me, and started to flirt with me. And I looked down at her and said, "You're a little drunk, dear." And she looked up at me and said, "Oh, I'm a lot drunk."
No, I thought she was going to say, "No, I'm a little drunk fox."
All right.
You got it eventually.
Now, At this point in time, I think you all need to be reintroduced to Grandma Dorsai here. This is a living legend. 3 years ago, at the opening days of Anthrocon, the Western lobby was beginning to fill up. And this was before they put that gigantic thing in the middle so that we had the floor mat. A large enthusiastic fur saw in the lobby another large enthusiastic fur we hadn't seen in a year, and immediately ran across the lobby, leaped into the air, into the arms of the other fur, and took out both of them, the Allegheny Sheriff's policeman and the concierge. At which point,
They just hadn't practiced. The floor was smooth. They were wearing new paws.
wham!
Inertia is a terrible mistress.
At this point, the ace crowd manager that sits next to me throughout my entire married life, thank goodness, walks up to them, looks at them, grabs each one of them by an ear, hauls them to their feet, marches them to the elevator lobby. The elevator doors go shook. Into the lobby. Go to your rooms. Shook. Standing O, ladies and gentlemen. Standing O.
Sometimes we do learn things.
We can be taught.
Well, this is a minor lesson, but I was doing traffic management, as so many of us do, for the parade. And the line of furries is going past, and I'm saying this way, and one fur came by and caught my eye. I think he was wolf or canine of some sort, but what caught my eye was what he was wearing, because it was a black blazer with fancily shaped lapels and white edging around the lapels and around the whole jacket. I recognized this immediately because what it is a reference to a truly wonderful TV show from the 60s called The Prisoner.
Yes.
How many of you are familiar with The Prisoner? A number, okay, the rest, I apologize to the rest of you for this, but we like to play along when we can. So as he passed me by, I said, "Be seeing you." And this is when I learned that it is actually possible for someone in a full fursuit to look startled. He did one of these. And turned around, and the line was still moving, so he walked backwards a few steps as he was going away from me, and I'd be seeing you.
I threw a few slides in here to show that while we did cut our teeth doing science fiction work, we've worked for other things. For several years, we did flight line security for the warbirds at Oshkosh. And if you don't know what the Oshkosh EAA fly-in is, it's probably the largest single gathering of private aircraft in the world. And we were wrangling people. You know, it was tough to get up and have, coffee with Chuck Yeager and Bud Anderson and hang out with Frank Borman, the commander of Apollo 8.
Yeah, who stole my cherry bagel.
Yes. We had these great green hats. Everybody who works on their flight line has a different colored hat, so they're instantly recognizable as what their job is. Crowd control had green hats, the flight guys who move the planes had orange hats, the medical guys had white hats. And one of the things you do is you get your hats autographed. That's where you get your autographs from people you meet. So it's like the third day in, and we're taking tickets at the VIP barbecue. Jaguar, well, here comes Frank Borman, right? Astronaut extraordinaire. Probably one of the guys that saved the space program with his report to Congress after the Apollo 1 fire. And he's walking up, and I'm wearing a hat, and his name is prominently right across the front of my hat. And he goes, he's smiling, he's got all these and he is like on, astronaut charm on. He goes, "Hey son, who's that on your hat there?" And I said, "Man, that's one of America's premier astronauts. Frank Borman." And the executives are like, "Oh, he made a joke." And he comes up and goes, "I'm going to tell Lobo you said that. I'm going to tell Lobo you said that."
We are known for keeping our sanity by doing terrible things to each other, occasionally to you. Musical interlude. My boyfriend thinks friendship is magic.
but I don't know where he could be. The Microsoft search engine's looking, hoping back my brony to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. We'll get him later for that. One of the shows we did for many, many years, sort of an offshoot of the old Trek stuff, was the Toronto Star Trek Con, which became hilarious. And me and my boys, including Tina, she was one of the boys at the time, we did the charity auction in as obnoxiously dressed as we could possibly be, which meant we get to be on stage with really cool people. This is Claudia Christian from Babylon 5. Now, she's smiling, we're all smiling, we're having a great time. This is literally 10 minutes after she got the phone call while standing behind that curtain from the producers of the show, telling her that she had been fired from the show.
Yeah.
We were standing looking at it, and the drop on her face was like, and we're like, okay, what's going on? And she told us, and we went, oh God. And she goes, do you want to cancel? And she went, wiped her eyes, touched up her makeup, said, nope, let's go. And came out with that smile, as pro as could be, did the thing, we had a great time. Afterwards, we went to the bar and got drunk. So, anyways.
Okay, it is 25 after 8. We don't have anything in here after us, so we're happy to stick around and talk. But I would like to close out this first hour with the story of my introduction to Anthrocon and to furry fandom. Now, the Dorsai have been working Anthrocon since 2002, but it started in Philadelphia. I live in Michigan. The drive seemed a little extreme for a fandom I didn't know anything about. But in 2006, the con moved to Pittsburgh. And I said, okay, 4.5 hours, that's a reasonable drive. And in 2007, I came to work my first Anthrocon. I drove in on Thursday. And the Anthrocon was about half the size it is now. My first work shift was Thursday night doing badge check outside the Thursday night dance.
Oh.
Now that's actually pretty easy because you folks are remarkably good at remembering to keep your badges visible.
You people show your badges when you leave rooms.
Yeah. This is true. So I'm standing there with my friend James. And James is from the Philadelphia area. He's
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Okay, so but he had been working Anthrocon since
The Sharp Edge down the street's one of his local
He was
bars.
the senior guy. He was the one with the radio, which was fine with me because I hate the radios. I can never understand what anyone is saying. Earthquake, tsunami, heavy casualties, typical Saturday night.
Yeah. Okay, repeat, all after incinerate.
So we're just standing there talking, checking badges. I'm also very happy to be outside the dance because inside the dance is very dark and very loud.
The music in the dances actually is not music, it is vibrations designed to sterilize gerbils at 80 paces.
And boy, are some of the first things surprised when we tell them that. But, so after we're there for a while, Giza comes by. Now, Giza for many years was the head of operations at Anthrocon. And please also say thank you to the operations and logistics guys, because they're not as visible as we are, but boy, they keep things running.
God almighty, what
And
an
they start
amazing
6 months
bunch
before
of
the con and run 6 months afterwards.
Giza comes by and he's got a flashlight. His job at that point is simply to walk through the dance and make sure everyone's
No
one is passed out on the floor, anything like that. He walks in carrying his flashlight. He comes out a few minutes later, he still has the flashlight, but he's just shaking his head.
And remember, this is Giza, okay?
Yeah. He doesn't know me at this point. I'm the new guy. But he does know James. So he walks over to the two of us. And he says, and I promise you, this is an exact quote, "What's the radio call sign for blowjob in progress?"
And without missing a beat.
No. James thought about this for a moment. And then he said, "I don't know. Who should ask on the radio?"
James is a rebel rouser.
And he did. It was the #1 topic of conversation the whole weekend. of course, was, well, that's a 1069. Which often got the response that, no, really, it's more of a 1034 and a half.
One of the popular responses was, it's a 10-0-0-0.
No. Let me finish the story. I was there when they asked one of the paid security guys in the convention center. He said, well, that'd be a 10-7 Bravo Juliet. And yeah, the winner of the weekend came from Jeff Lamb, who was on our staff, and said, well, yeah, that's a 10-0. Which pretty much summed up the weekend. So yeah, that was how I got introduced to all of this.
I'm a married lady and I hate going to look in the corners of the dance. I don't know what I'm going to see that I'll never be able to forget.
Any questions?
It was funny because the very first time we worked, there was a little trepidation. We were not furry fans, and people looked at us as severe outsiders. And
Well, also remember that the previous experience was kind of jackboot in its approach. And all of you were extraordinarily unhappy with it.
But so some guys came up to us and said, "Oh, you must think we're really odd and out there." And Ricky and I had a chuckle. And I said, "Kid, you don't even twig my kinko-meter." We came up in fandom in the 60s and 70s and early 80s when we had to have rules in the masquerade that was no costume is no costume. And peanut butter isn't a costume. Yes, we needed that rule. Thank you, Scott Shaw. We'll mention his name only because he was a guest at Anthrocon.
And then, of course, right after that, when they put in the no peanut butter rule, some idiot had to cover himself with jelly, so it was no anything that could stick, drip, or get onto anybody else's costume.
Yes.
Well, that takes care of that, Kate.
If it sticks to yourself, that's
Fandom
fine.
in general has gotten a little
Don't call
more
us to take it off.
conservative over the last few years.
Sure has.
Well, we've gotten older.
Most of it.
There's a hand in the back.
This is what happens.
Okay, we've got a question.
I came here late. Where do you get your name from?
Okay, series of stories and novels written starting in the 1950s by Gordon R. Dickson. Dorsai is a planet that was settled by humans, and then they discovered that it was short of natural resources. So in order to, the only thing they could trade with other planets was themselves, so they became mercenary soldiers.
Start with Gordon R. Dickson, Tactics of Mistake. Look it up, buy it. It's still available online.
But those Dorsai, we're not those Dorsai.
No,
we're
we're the
regular
remnants
guys.
of the Mongol horde that moved into the swamp and then couldn't be extricated.
So we're the irregulars, do you say?
Absolutely.
Instead of using heavy tactics and attacking the bad guys, we just throw in bombs because if they can't get out of their ship, they can't counterattack.
Just light a fire under their
This is only going to show what happens when Sam can't find a wine glass.
What the heck room is that? This is an acceptable alternative.
How long ago?
Oh.
Well, that.
Based on the shirt post 2008.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard to say. By the way, that's my doctor next to me. How many of you know? How many of you remember Trigger? Kevin Kell. He created the great mecha. Yeah, what you guys do. He created the great Mecha Wolf. Fursuit with the little cockroach going, "I'm gonna take over the world."
He turned 50 last week.
He did. He turned 50 this week. Trigger and his husband Gary own a bar, which is half bar, half pinball arcade in Fort Collins, Colorado, called Flipside, and it is insanely popular, and they're doing really well for themselves. Trigger is actually still building pinball machines from scratch, just to keep his hand in it. So one year, we have an annual meeting that we call Dorsai Thing. We have to have it as a business meeting, but it's really a weekend-long, sort of a private convention, invite only, and we have a great time. So Trigger sends us this package, and it's a 30-year-old bottle of Lefroy, which is a very fine, very smoky scotch. And this is wonderful, and we're drinking it, and it's like drinking liquid smoke. It was wonderful. And I went to write him a thank you note from us. And I went and looked, and I took a quick look to see. A 30-year-old bottle of Lefroy costs $225. I said, why in God's name did you send us a $225 30-year-old scotch? He says, because I couldn't afford the 45-year-old. No, okay. Just one last thing, we can get back to the stories. So we work, this is a big con. This is the third biggest, well actually the second biggest con we officially work. The biggest one is MagFest, which is actually a gaming alternate music convention in Washington, D.C. And there are about 12,000 people these days. The smallest con we work is this one, which is ErieCon. We literally outnumber the attendees, and there's only 4 of us there. It's very, 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 very tiny.
But they keep inviting us back every year.
To give you an idea, the room here is about the size of this stage, which is the dealer's room, the art show room in that space. And there's room to spare.
All sorts of fandom. Yes?
How many cons?
Oh, Jesus, we've lost count. Skip?
You
We
still have
average-
copies, you ought to have 8 clues.
Yeah, we have passed, I think we're pushing 200 at this point,
Oh.
maybe more. I don't have a really good.
Okay, we've been up and running since
For
'74.
44 years, yeah.
That's a
On
good research.
average, we did 3 to 5 conventions a year in the old days, somewhat more in the middle period, and lots more lately, and most of it fur or media.
Yes.
We are busier now than we ever have been in the past.
Seize your badge.
Oh,
Varies
what-
all over the place.
Kay, what do you
From
do?
the beginning.
Hi, I'm a food service professional. I'm about to retire after a career as a chef, food service manager, administrator, and my next step will probably be to teach hospitality management
She's at the University of Michigan.
at the moment, yeah. Soon I'll be living in Virginia with my husband, where he's been working for 4 years.
Okay,
I
Proton, what do you do?
I'm a senior scientific analyst for Air Force Acquisition, Science, Technology, and Engineering.
And used to be a,
I used to break atoms on submarines for a living.
I argue with computers. Solution architect, application design, programming, customer support, software installations, everything that a modern day person who argues with computers has to deal with.
For many years, I was a user services professional at the university level, and for the last 20 or so years, I've been a AV professional, doing everything from small hotel business to Broadway shows size productions.
45 years as a practicing internist, still in practice.
We don't call him doctor.
We don't call him doctor for nothing, yeah.
30 years working for foreign-owned banks in the country, doing websites and playing Last Sing Human.
Yeah, we have doctors, lawyers, accountants, computer
We got
people,
Paris up there who could
all over
testify.
the place.
And Sam Paris,
Sam
yeah.
Paris, otherwise known as Uncle Firearms.
Sam's done a lot of things, including, you're currently doing optics. That's
Yeah.
right. That's another story altogether. Let's not start telling GT stories when we really Sam does you're doing optical stuff these days.
Optical stuff. You got photons here, you need them there, I'm in.
We also have
Go
other
Tom!
things we do for fun. I'm very active in the subset of science fiction fandom known as Filk, which is, I'm a songwriter, singer, performer, I also do community theater. So,
You're a bard.
we keep busy.
Yeah,
We refer to the kinds of people who join us as responsibility junkies.
Stop me before I volunteer again.
Yes.
Yeah, Mark, Ann, and I are members of the Phil Hall of Fame, as a matter of fact. That's an award.
If you have any interest in seeing this stuff I write, go to markbernsteinfilk.wordpress.com.
You just put together a Mark Bernstein concordance.
Yes.
What's the filter you might know?
What you might know.
I know a lot of filters, I'm just wondering.
Well, I can tell you that in over 40 years in fandom, the single most memorable moment I've ever had, although being inducted into the Hall of Fame was close, goes back to 1979. It was a thing in Chicago, I think,
Or like
when I got to sing my version of The Green Hills of Earth for Robert Heinlein.
Yep, we did that in 1975 at Mid-Americon. Robert Anson Heinlein was the guest of honor. Ann and I got to sing, not Green Hills.
We sang Heinlein to Heinlein. We sang Poole Anderson to Poole Anderson. Filk at the time was not respectable. Science fiction fans are supposed to be serious and constructive, which is one of the reasons they're stone boring now. And they are, but at Mid-Americon, they had a masquerade. And judging the masquerade were two gentlemen, Roger Zelazny and Wilson Tucker, and one lady,
Bevan.
Catherine Kurtz.
Catherine Kurtz.
And Tucker was voting for all the naked ladies, and Bevan was voting against all the naked ladies.
And Zelazny
was hiding under the table.
table.
So the lady came up, handed me my guitar, because we were working backstage, and I was going through Mrs. Resnick's black top feathers, looking for her contact lens.
That was what she was wearing, basically, was feathers. And for some reason would not let me look for the contact
It
lens.
was a beautiful costume.
It was
Anyway,
a really nice contact lens, too.
so the nice lady came up, who was running it, came up and said, we've got, the judges are deadlocked. Here's your guitar, get up and fill. And so we sang, and we sang a couple million verses of the Chicken Song and anything else. And everybody had a wonderful time, which was a good thing because the doors were being guarded by a fan group who were very strict. And if you left to go to the bathroom, they would not let you back in.
Who knows the Chicken Song?
That's the one you bought.
Had no chicken, nothing would she lay.
Yeah,
That's it. And,
Had
but
no-
after
I
that,
had no chicken. No eggs,
Phil
no
was
eggs.
respectable. And that was when the Spanish conventions began to set aside times and places for it.
Well, Marcon Ballroom helped.
A couple things. A few years ago, Tom Smith was a musical guest of honor. He's probably best known for Talk Like a Pirate Day, but he's done, spoofs of various songs. And one little one that I know is based on Groucho's theme song. Let's see if I can do it. Hooray for Frodo Baggins, the Middle-earth explorer. I've just come back from water. Hooray, hooray, hooray.
Yep.
You know his badge and pajamas song?
Tom is one of my dearest friends. He lives just a mile from me. I also do a
Seven
lot of
Drunken
parody.
Nights in Space.
Yes.
Tom, the first time that I heard Badger Pajamas, I fell in love with it. So he was going to be guest of honor at a Philadelphia convention shortly after that. I got a set of size 5X pajamas, men's pajamas, and I painted badgers and a snake and mushrooms on it. And I had it all ready for him, and I get into the room, and he's just about to start singing Badger Pajamas, and I'm like, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And as soon as he gets on, I dash up and I go, this is for you. And so I have a picture of him wearing Badger Pajamas.
Badger pajamas. We will have to talk that over with Tom at some point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Many of you might recognize, that's Diana Harlenstein, my lovely wife, and Heather Bruton. Diana is also a member of the Rosa Regulars. She's also a 5-time Hugo fan artist nominee. They're both published authors.
Yeah.
Diana's been in analog and book covers and gaming, and Heather's been all over the place. So we hang out with these guys a lot. Oh, the year we did the ear tags. That's
Yes.
one of the best.
Oh, okay. Who remembers the mic tags? Who's got a mic tag?
My husband has a lot.
There you go.
Every year that you could get one, he had to have one.
Yep.
He lost one year. You never saw a man so broken hearted.
Yep.
Aw.
Yeah, we are discussing bringing something of that ilk back again, and would be interested in knowing whether you're interested. Want a set of mic tags?
Please, of course.
We'll pass that along. Thank you.
That's the thing. The ear tags were one of the most successful things we've ever done because we just wanted to say, hey, we like to play too.
Steve's not here, so we can make fun of him.
Steve and his steampunk hat.
Oh, yes.
Oh my, that's a tiny hat. Oh, A&G, we did this little gaming con in Ohio, and they had professional wrestling going on. It was rather surreal. And worse is, it was science fiction fantasy professional wrestling, so all the wrestlers were dressed like characters like from He-Man and.
He-Man is not science fiction.
Well, it's fantasy.
Yeah, all right.
Oh, these are those two awful. Somebody had cleaned out their grandmother's basement and brought these bottles of wine, Hikagi. They're 40-year-old bottles of German white wine.
Oh, dear God.
And there were things in them. Terrible, terrible things. White wine does not last, by the way.
You couldn't see through the bottle.
No. Well, you could see things in the bottle. You couldn't see through the
They were
bottle.
going, hey.
Yeah, a few years ago when there was an alien theme here at Anthrocon, we revised the Klingon Diplomatic Corps. It came out in your steering best.
Yes, you as I recall, KDC in Bermuda shorts at the end of things.
That was Steve.
That was Steve who'd
Was
gone
No,
native.
that was when I built one of my.
What was that?
Be good or Ferp will come back and make you chew aspirin. How many of you remember Ferp? He was a wonderful, wonderful man. We loved him to death. He was one of our first, full-time medical guys, and he was unfortunately killed by a drunk driver.
Yeah. The originator of the Ferp handshake. We generally have the Purell gel in operations and in security. And the Ferp handshake was you got both folks going to do the handshake in a big old palm full of gel and shake hands. Very healthy. And totally disgusting and totally Ferp.
How many of you have heard now, it's become ubiquitous in furry fandom, the 6-2-1 rule?
Yeah.
6 hours of sleep, 2 meals a day, 1 shower. We call it Passive Boys Law.
Thank you.
Because Bob came up with that one.
Yep, that was an article written for the first modern Chicago World Con. And so it's been around.
And I had a correlation to this, which was...
his corollaries, okay.
Yeah. Red Bull's not sleep.
Well, wait a
Cheetos
minute,
is not
let's do
food.
this right.
Okay.
Rule number 1, the original rule was 6 hours. This is how to survive a 5-day World Con, but of course, Anthrocon lasts 8 weeks. So, minimum 5 hours sleep every night.
Correlation. Red Bull is not sleep.
Right.
Rule number 2, 2 good meals every day. Corollary.
Cheetos are not food.
Rule number 3, 1 shower every 24 hours. Corollary.
Febreze is not a shower.
I'd also like to say
Thank you.
there
The
was some
t-shirt is
interesting
available from
laundry
Off-World
rules in
Designs online.
the house the
If
last
you
time.
get one, I'm willing to autograph it.
Everybody smells like a different flower.
Okay, so see these people here? This was a few years ago when the G7 was coming to Pittsburgh. It was following Anthrocon in. The two gentlemen were the front men for the Japanese delegation to the G7, and the young lady was a member of the U.S. State Department who was their guide and translator. They were walking through the streets of Pittsburgh, and they saw the fursuits. Now in Japan, furry animal costumes are ubiquitous. You see them a lot in Japan. So they're like, ooh, what's that? And they followed the fursuits into the convention center and got to the front of the door where I got a call. I was working the floor, and they said, just come over here. I can't explain what this is. And basically, they were just like, oh, what's going on? And through the translator, they were like, and we said, well, absolutely, you can come in. So we escorted them in, and they walked around. And about an hour later, they both had tails and stacks of furry porn. And they had big grins on their faces, and I really would like to hear what they went back to their delegation and told them.
There are other kinds of interactions. How many of you remember the New York Yankees? See, there was a year when the Yankees were in town to play the Pirates, and they stayed at the Westin. Yes, the New York Yankees showed up with their security staff. Their security guy was really not happy that the hotel was full of people in masks. And they wanted the hotel cleared, or at least the lobby and the balcony around the lobby. And I just recently learned this one from Steve. Apparently the head of security for the Yankees demanded that all public areas be cleared of these people with masks, and Rennie told him no. And this guy came in to loom over Rennie. Rennie is...
Which isn't hard, by the way.
Yeah, Rennie is not small, but he is not tall. He's just solid.
He's built like Wolverine.
Yeah.
He's built
This
like a
guy
firefly.
loomed over him and said, "You don't want to mess with me. I'm a former New York City policeman."
Wow.
Rennie looked up at him and said, "101st Airborne. Brilliant." And the guy backed off.
Yeah, you have to understand that one of the things Rennie did when he was 101st Airborne was field test new designs for parachutes.
He
I
used
did
to
not
be
wear
6
them.
foot tall.
And when they stopped letting him jump out of airplanes because he hurt himself too many times, they made him a sniper. The year we did Aliens, remember about the Klingons back? We made ourselves our own fursuit. That's me as a Klingon Targ, at the time known as Kaflu. Thank you. Mr. Glenn.
Glenn used to run the art show here.
We
No,
do
actually,
participate
that's no
occasionally.
Holbrook.
No, that's Glenn.
Okay, it's Glenn.
We have a member who's marched in the parade in a gorilla suit a couple of times.
Absolutely.
Which is
Last
funny.
black and a red t-shirt.
Which is funny because his nickname is
Oh, there
Bear.
he is.
John.
Yep, there he is. There's
Mark.
Bear.
There he is. Yes.
Which he bought to celebrate National Gorilla Suit Day, which is January
Wait a
31st.
minute,
Thank you,
Acme
Mark.
or Apex Gorilla Suit?
Apex, of course.
Actually, no, they're both owned by the same
Yes.
company. Roar! Okay, the source of that. 50 points for anybody who can source that.
Yep.
Okay, Don Martin, Mad Magazine.
That's right.
The man who invented National Gorillas.
That's right.
So,
All right, we're out of pictures.
we're out of pictures.
It's
We're
almost
certainly
10
not
o'clock.
out of stories, but
Oh, believe me, you catch us with perhaps a small drink in our hands and just sit and give us cues, and the stories do not end. Because,
No shit.
oh yeah, no shit, Sarge. You know,
There I
you just
was.
there I was.
yeah.
There I was doing security on the Kelly Freeze exhibit at the Worldcon in Kansas City, and this little blonde guy comes running up to her and says, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, you gotta come with me, you gotta see this exhibit."
And I said, I'm very sorry, you know, but I'm on duty, I cannot leave. Which was a pity because it was Mark Hamill.
And it was the promo for the first Star Wars movie.
And they literally were running around the con trying to get people to come and see their promo for this little science fiction movie they made.
Wow.
He was so
Emmett
cute.
Harrison and Carrie Fisher.
This was before, of course, he ran into the
Tree.
pavement as a tree
First,
with
yeah.
his motorcycle. But
You have the poster there saying that the artwork was stolen or whatever. Did they find it?
no,
Never found again.
What it was a cover proof. What the way Kelly worked his contracts when he did a cover for Analog, because he worked in oil primarily, he would do 5, 6, 7 small proofs, which he would then send to the art editor at Analog, who would sift through them, pick the one he liked, say, "Okay, do this one," and he'd send the rest back to Kelly. Kelly would then put them in art shows at conventions. At Anthrocon 2, with a sleep security guard, somebody walked out with one of these and a square shirt. And at that point, Aspen said, "No, we're not doing this again. We understand fandom. We know how these art shows work. We're going to do this instead." And we've been reasonably successful ever since.
Another con, I'm not sure what con it was, but Catherine Kurtz was the guest of honor. She has her own,
yeah.
little cadre of mercenaries that follow around. And
Absolutely.
Catherine is the most lovely of ladies,
Yes, she
and
is
she
seven.
can hold herself high and hoity as anyone. So we had our embassy, which was basically our suite where we were out drinking, and there was a knock at the door, and there she was a cadre of her little followers, and she said, "Thank you, ladies, I'll be in fine hands now." And they all went away, and the door closed, and she went, "Oh, fuck, somebody pour me a drink." Because Catherine was a great friend of Gordy's. They were boon companions and great friends, and Catherine was just a stick.
Yeah, this is the lady who at a small Michigan convention was housed in the apartment of, a house. So she stayed overnight at Sharon's.
Yeah.
And shared a very tiny bedroom with 4 other people, including Ann and I. We wake up in the morning, because we have to get back to the convention, and Ann and I are feeling sort of like the bottom of a cat pan. Catherine sits up, shakes her golden hair twice, and my God, there wasn't a hair out of place on that one.
And her makeup was perfect.
I've never forgiven her for that.
I mean, there was one story. It's not a Dorsai story, but it's still a fun Spanish story. So, we became really good friends with Alan Dean Foster. So the wonderful sorcerer, you know. But Frank Beatty, you know, from the Dune movie, Frank Beatty's sweetheart, Alan Dean Foster writes all of our novelizations. So we're at WindyCon, and it's the weekend that the movie 2010, the sequel to 2001, came out. And we're having dinner with Alan Foster and a guy named Chuck Anshell, who ran the Judges Guild, one of the biggest gaming cons. And Chuck and Alan were good friends. So we're sitting there, and it's like, Alan's like, yeah, we should go see that movie. I wonder if we can get in. I said, come on, it's, you know, it's Friday night. It's playing across at the Woodfield, but, you know, there's no way we're going to get in. He goes, call him up. Use my name. It'll be fine. So I was like, it's pre-cell phone day. So I thought, oh, what the hell? I ran to the concierge desk. He pulled up the number for the movie theater. I said, yes, well, my name is David Stein. I'm a representative of famous award-winning science fiction author Alan D. Foster, who happens to be in town and would like to come to your theater to see the movie 2010. Is there any way we can arrange saying, we'll call tickets? And the guy on the other end was like, Alan D. Foster? Oh, yes. Is the 9:10 showing good for you? And this is like, you know, 20 minutes from, I said, yes, it's perfectly fine, thank you very much. And she goes, how many tickets do you want? And I said, 4. And he said, okay, great. So I hung up and I went back to dinner and cracked up laughing, going, oh my God, I can't believe that worked. So we go across the street with Mark Hyde, who was a fan who became a very famous movie prop maker in Hollywood, makeup guy. And we go to the movie theater, and the guy meets us at the box office. And he has this dog-eared copy of one of the Flinks books.
Yes.
And he's like, Mr. Foster, I'm a huge fan of yours. Could I get an autograph? And Alan's like, why, certainly you ought to. And then, being the good guy he is, he reached into his satchel and pulled out whatever his latest paperback was and signed it to the guy.
Aww.
And he was like, oh, thank you very much. And we were escorted into a packed movie theater, except for 4 seats in the middle that were roped off. And I was like, and I said, now I'm playing the agent here. And I said, I'm reaching for my wallet. Now, how much do you want to take us? Oh, no, I'm the house, please. Thank you very much. And we sat down and go, very good. And they walked away. And we fucking died laughing. Oh my God, I can't believe we got away with that.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you all very much.
Thank you all so much.
Silver Gattoman, he bought me a coffee. Silver Gattoman, here is the song for thee. He likes to video all the panels at the cons. You should go and watch them whether they are short or long. Silver Gattoman, you video that's not a jibe. All of you go to his YouTube channel and like and subscribe.